give you some sentences, and I would like for you to write down what you think a sentence is. So I'm just not going to be turning my voice on, okay?
Oh crap, I'm doing my notebook today.
5 practices first.
I'm just going to write it on the back.
First one.
So I have paper. Actually, I have to write it on. Oh wait, it's like question.
That's practice number 1. Number 2.
I didn't see that.
Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. The look on your face is priceless. Priceless. All right. Number 1. Good morning. Raise your hand high. Be proud. All right. Okay. Number 2 was thank you. Who had thank you? Yay. Good. All right. Number 3. Hello. You had hello. Excellent. Number 4, how are you? Excellent. And number 5 was goodbye. Okay, did anyone have all 5 correct? Woohoo! All right. Who had 4? Who had 3? Who had less than 3? Okay. So, when someone says, oh, I can't agree. Well, now, some of these, I will admit, I tried to give you some facial expression. I tried to give you some other cues so that you would know, because you may not have gotten it just from the lips. Let's try a couple. We're going to do probably 5 or 6 more. The next one. Number 3. Do it again. last one. All right. Let's see how you did. The first one, what happened? The second one, how old are you? The third one, what's your number? The fourth one, do you understand? The next one, all right. The next one, how have you been? And the last one, I can't remember. Right, who got them all? Okay. Who missed no more than 2? Wow, excellent. Who missed no more than 3? Who missed more than 3? Not bad. Okay. The point is, people can speech read. It is a skill. Now, what you find is that if you look at the person's errors, I mean, I'm not looking at what did you miss. First of all, I don't care if you didn't get every single word. Did you at least get the meaning? If you at least got the gist of what was being said, to me, I count that as a correct. Because bottom line is you understood the message. But if you do a speech reading test with the patient, look for patterns. Maybe they consistently miss questions rather than statements. Are there, maybe they consistently miss the short phrases or statements as opposed to something that's lengthier. Why is it important to do that kind of a meta-analysis of the person's errors?
So you know what areas you need to
So you know what to target, exactly. Make your job a little bit easier. I actually gave you some sentences from the Utley lip reading test. If you remember, I mentioned that. You can see from the yellowing of the paper and that it's typed that this has been around for a long time. They didn't put the year for this one, but I'm guessing this is one from the 60s. Like the original version would be my guess. But you can also do, you don't have to use the Utley. Like I said, you can use everyday sentences. What's really kind of cool is there are some everyday sentences that came out of the Central Institute for the Deaf, which is at Washington University in St. Louis. And they have a test that was designed to be done for people who are deaf and hard of hearing in the unaided condition, so without their hearing aids. So I have used it frequently for speech reading because it's designed to not give them enhanced auditory, so, and it actually is, it's called the Visual Enhancement Everyday Sentences Test. And what's really cool is that it has, like for example, a sentence on here, everything's all right. And it has everything and right underlined, meaning that they're the key words. So if they get those, it's correct. As opposed to, those windows are so dirty I can't see anything outside. Well, it has, in that sentence, it has 8 key words. Those windows so dirty I can't see anything, or I can't anything outside. So if you wanted to give a test that maybe tells you a little bit more reliably whether or not they're getting the gist or the keywords, you can use one like this. And there are other tests. There's a test called the Quick SIN, which is the Quick Speech and Noise Test. So it's designed has a CD. It's designed to be a speech and noise test, but it also has underlined the key words. There's no reason why you can't use those materials and come up with your own. But again, it tells you what are the words that are important. There's a test called the time compressed sentences test, and again, it does the same thing. It's a CD, you can play it, and it has rapid speech, but you could say those sentences without voicing, and again, it has the key words underlined so that you can, if you wanted to get a percentage, so if you wanted to report that, you know, in a test of speech reading, the patient, you know, was able to identify 83% of the key words. That's great because it gives you a baseline. You can do some training. Try it again down the road, see how they do, and now you've got your outcome measure. So I would suggest, the thing that I like about the Utley is that there's Form A and Form B, so it was designed to be compatible so that, you know, maybe at baseline you give them Form A, you do your training, then at discharge you do Form B, and you can be relatively sure you're comparing apples to apples. Whereas, you know, something like the CID everyday sentences, maybe you give half of them. You give the first 10, and then you give the last 10. Because unfortunately, there's not different versions. So. But anyway, I just wanted to demonstrate that for you. But the cool thing is, everybody can. Even the people who swear that they're horrible, everyone in here got at least a 20% or higher. So, all right, questions about any of that? Nope. See, you could read my lips. She could read my lips. We're going to work on and talk about group oral rehab at this point. And one of the things that was mentioned in the article that you reviewed is that one of the criticisms of the research for those of us who advocate the use of group oral rehab is that psychologically there can be some benefit just from going through an experience with other people. There's a bonding effect when you go through a shared experience, and so that's why I put up this Misery Loves Company. Because yes, that's true, but that doesn't negate the actual improvement in skills or perceptions. I think sometimes the research tends to poo-poo or downplay the person's perceptions of their benefit. Hello. To me, that's one of the most critical elements. I may not see on paper that they had a dramatic improvement, but if their feeling is, wow, this was worthwhile, I'm glad I have these hearing aids, I'm glad I went through this, then to me, that's success. Because what do we do often in, not just in our profession, but in other professions and other industries, they always look at, satisfaction rates. What's, they'll, see commercials and they'll say, 96% satisfaction rate. Well, that's a big deal. You're not going to advertise 52% satisfaction rate because that's not great. So anyway, just don't, please, this is my bias, don't allow the fact that, and the thing is that article that you guys did review is not the be all end all. It was one person's review. You can actually, there are similar articles from other people that have had differing results. So I don't, after reading that article, I don't want to leave you with the impression that there's not enough research out there. I'm going to present some other research so that hopefully you're going to feel comfortable, yeah, we really should be doing this. But again, that is my bias, so feel free to have other opinions, that's okay. Folks in the know, like, and you may remember from reading the article, they referred to Pat Krikos several times. She was my professor at the University of Florida. She's one of the goddesses of oral rehab, and particularly working with older adults. She's done fascinating research on just like what color of background and print you should use if you're using printed materials with older. I mean, she's just fascinating. And I was lucky enough to have her agree to 3 years ago, I was the chair of the audiology track for the Kentucky Speech Language Hearing Association conference, and I was lucky enough to convince several of my professors from the University of Florida to come as presenters, and Dr. Kelly did too, which was really kind of cool. And she did a workshop, 3-hour workshop on group and individual rehab with older adults. So this first line is actually a quote from her, that oral rehab is essential to the successful management of and coping with hearing loss. So if Pat Krikos said it, I'm going to believe it. What level of research would that be? We have an expert opinion. Does it make the list? It does. It's pretty low, but it is a level 5. Yeah, but you guys should know that. I'd throw a shoe back there if you didn't. But yes, you are correct. Thank you for being brave. So what we know is that most of you who've done any observations with us downstairs, you've seen some individual sessions. At the fitting appointment, we do some oral rehab. At their first follow-up appointment, we do some oral rehab. We get feedback from them. What's working, what's not, what are you liking, where are you still struggling? And based on that feedback, that individual feedback, we can make adjustments or modifications. And that's all well and good, but they're not the most time efficient because I'm trying to think who's probably had more sessions with me. Probably you, don't you think, actually? You've had several with me, haven't you? Thinking, oh, okay, we're just thinking of the patients that you have had with me. How often were we covering the same thing with the same patients?
Oh my gosh, like all the time.
Thank you. And that's the thing. You find yourself going over the same things, educating them about the same topics, responding to the same complaints and concerns, patient after patient after patient after patient. So it's not a real time efficient use of my expertise. Because if I have 6 patients scheduled and I'm doing follow-up with 3 of them, 2 of them are new evaluations and the others are initial fittings, the only thing that's bringing in revenue are the evaluations and the fittings. Those follow-ups, because they're paying for that kind of upfront. We use a bundled billing approach so that they pay one price that includes the hearing aids and their follow-up care for a certain amount of time. So that's those 3 appointments where I'm seeing those patients individually for follow-up are non-revenue generating. Well, what if I were to move those 3 patients off my schedule, get them into a group rehab program, and now I have 3 more appointments on my schedule that are open, potentially revenue generating appointments. Think that might make a difference? You multiply that by how many weeks a year, how many days a week a person works. That's a huge, huge difference in revenue. And I hate to harp on that, but you guys are in a healthcare business. It is a business, whether you want to think about it that way or not. Because guess what? Ain't no money coming in, ain't no doors going to stay open, ain't no food going to be on your table. You have to be paid for what you do. As much as we love patients, and I would love to not have to worry with the money part, we have to. So those individual sessions and your facial expression and reaction is exactly the truth. You find yourself thinking, oh my God, I should just videotape this and put the, well, that's why group sessions can be advantageous. They're cost effective because if I can provide the same information and the same counseling to 3, 4, 6, 8 patients at one time, that's much more cost effective. That's a much better use of my time. It also gives them a chance to interact. Perhaps someone is struggling with the same, or was struggling with the same issue, but they've come up with a creative solution. Wow, would it be nice to hear from them? Who do you believe, or who do you find it easier to buy into? Someone my age or a peer? Be honest, I'm not going to be offended. You're going to take the word of a peer over if I'm making a recommendation for a place that's, great to go have a drink and have something to eat. If I say it versus one of your friends say it, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, right. Yeah. So, of course, depending on what it is, you're going to be much more likely to take the word of a peer. And so that interaction can't be, we can't downplay that enough. It does improve outcomes. Even though one of the criticisms of the that were launched about the research about Group AR in the article that you read was that there wasn't a uniformity of outcome measures, so it was really kind of hard to know for sure. But if you look at each individual study that was done,
Thank you.
there's often, as long as the person uses the same measure pre and post, you're going to have outcome information. And if you look at it at that level, overwhelmingly, the outcomes show improvement. So that even though this one might have used the hearing handicap inventory, and this one might have used the SAC, and this one might have used the SOAK, and this one might have used the COSI, yeah, it's going to be hard to you're comparing apples to oranges to peaches to pears. But if you look at the pre and post of any one of those, typically you're going to see that there is improvement. So we have to look at where did they start, where did they end, just like we demonstrated with our little Utley test. Each one of you has a baseline score. If we did some training and we did it again, hopefully we're going to see some improvement. For some of you, there's not much room for improvement, but then that would tell me, okay, well, we don't need to waste time on that then with this patient. We can move on to something else. And one of the things that we have seen, and again, it's something that was somewhat downplayed, is the return for credit. people who complete a group oral rehab program are significantly less likely to return their hearing aids for credit than folks who go through the program. And they're also the ones that are less likely to keep them and have them in a drawer. Because that's the worst place to put your hearing aids, is in the drawer and leaving them. And granted, overall, the national average is about 9 to 12% return rate, depending on whose statistics you look at. But, and that's in general, but if you look at people who have gone through group oral rehab, the return rate is fairly consistently right around the 3% mark. So 3% compared to 9 to 12%, that's a pretty significant reduction. And to me, that's a pretty legitimate indicator that people are happy. So they're not going to spend $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 for something that they're not satisfied with. They're going to return it. And so if you're seeing that dramatic of a reduction in the return rate, I think that speaks volumes to the potential. Okay. There are a lot of different models out there. One that I really have a lot of respect for, and there is evidence-based research to back it up. For those of you who are not familiar with the geography of Florida, Gainesville is here, where the University of Florida is. Jacksonville is here. It's less than an hour apart. The Mayo Clinic model was actually designed jointly with some of the folks from the University of Florida, and I'm not just saying that because I went there. The program is rated number 3 in the country, so it's kind of, you can pretty much assume that they are using the best practices. And so they have 2 different programs that they use. A lot of people don't know that Mayo Clinic isn't just in Rochester. There's this one in Jacksonville, and then there's one in Phoenix as well. And now in northern Kentucky, all of the St. Elizabeth hospitals have aligned themselves with Mayo. So we actually have it in our backyard. But anyway, they have 2 different tracks. They have one track that's developed and designed for new hearing aid users, so people who've never used amplification before. And that group is led by an audiologist. And the focus is a little bit different for that group than for folks who are more experienced hearing aid users. And that group may be led by an audiologist, but more often than not, it's a sleep pathologist that leads it. And again, like I said, they have 2 different focuses. So in their model, the people who are new hearing aid users, the fee for participation is included in their price. So that single price that they pay, it includes the hearing aid, it includes their follow-up care, and it includes the price for participation in the oral rehab program. New patients who complete the program, as an incentive, they also get a free carton of batteries, which is 10 packs. And I'm not sure if they use 4 packs, 6 packs, 8 packs, 3 packs. I don't know how many batteries it actually is, but there's usually 10 packages in a carton, and you multiply that by however many, that may be more than a year's worth of batteries for some people. They encourage not only the patient, but a significant other to attend as well. I've seen some sessions where they actually had multiple significant others. Like I remember one elderly woman who was living with her daughter and son-in-law and their kids, and her daughter, her son-in-law, and the teenage grandson, who was like 16 or 17, all came with her. So that was kind of cool. But anyway, they attend 4 sessions. Each one lasts 75 minutes. And we schedule them in the early evening so that you won't have to miss work, and yet they're not dying of starvation and disrupting their entire evening. They have a course evaluation that patients fill out at the end. This particular study was referenced in your paper where they had a 96% of the participants rated the program a 5 or a 6 on a 1 to 6 scale. The people at Mayo Jacksonville, they have a 1% return rate for participants versus 10% in people who didn't. That's huge. Because think about it, not only when a person returns a hearing aid, not only are you not getting the revenue from the hearing aid, or the hearing aids, you're also then, if you use a bundled approach, which most people do, and why this is the reason why I am advocating that we don't, is then you also, all the time that you spend with that patient, at the fitting, any follow-ups, you just donated your time for free. Now, most states allow us to keep what they refer to as a cancellation or a restocking fee, so that maybe we return 90% of the purchase price. And there are people that have a really hard time doing that. And I'm like, my God, I spent my time with them. If you go to your doctor and he prescribes an antibiotic for you, and you take it for the whole course and you're still sick and you go back, he doesn't see you for free. No. He tries something else. So why should I give away my services for free? But there are people, most people don't do that even though we're allowed to. And so that ends up being not only the loss of the income or the revenue from those hearing aids, but also for any time that you've spent with them since their initial assessment. And a lot of these hearing aid stores and everything, that's why they don't charge for the evaluation, because they make their money from the sales. And so for them, a return, that's why a lot of them are so aggressive. And I've talked with a couple of students in here who have loved ones who've had bad experiences with that. And that's one of the reasons why they're so aggressive, because if you return your hearing aids, then every minute that they have spent with you at all was free time. And they work on commission. So typically, so if they sold 10 hearing aids this week and, one person returned them, so they have a 10% return rate, that's gonna have a dramatic impact on their income. So anyway, so the return rate is dramatically improved. These are for the folks who are the first time users. And so session 1 is basically everyone gets introduced and they do like a little icebreaker type of activities. They review the objectives for the entire course. They talk about how the ear works. Why do you think it's important for patients to have an understanding of how the ear works? Let me ask you, I'm going to pick on you, Elizabeth, if that's okay. When you take off your glasses, you don't see as well. But when you put your glasses on, you pretty much can see perfectly crystal clear, right? Why is it then that when I put a hearing aid in a person's ear, everything's not crystal clear? Because of what? What do the glasses do? When you put your glasses on, what's the purpose? And what it does is it shifts where the image focuses or projects inside your eye. Okay? So it moves it to where it needs to be. Well, if everyone had conductive hearing loss, then everyone would be perfectly happy with hearing aids because all we have to do is make everything louder. Okay? So it's a mechanical problem. But what type of hearing loss do most of our patients have? Sensory neural. And so it's not just a mechanical problem, it's a perceptual problem as well. And so they need to understand that. They need to know that putting hearing aids in is not like popping on a new pair of glasses or putting in a new set of contact lenses. Most people who wear corrective lenses, it's a mechanical problem. And we're just moving where the image projects inside the eye to make it clear. With damage to the inner ear, it would be sort of like people who have damage to the retina. Okay? And so people who have retinitis pigmentosa, glaucoma, macular degeneration, things like that, where there's actually damage to the end organ of vision, then corrective lenses are only going to do so much. And it's the same way with the ear. We have a purely mechanical problem. Hearing aids are absolutely fantastic because all they need is an increase in loudness. But most of our patients also have a loss of perception and discrimination because there's damage to the organ of hearing. And so I think it's important for people to understand how the ear works and the differences. And then typically what happens is there will be some discussion about what types of situations people are struggling with. And then there's an opportunity to share ideas, thoughts, and strategies to help with those situation-specific problems. Sometimes that can lead to a discussion of assistive technology. Maybe they need an FM system. Maybe they need some device for their telephone. Maybe they need to get a new telephone. Whatever the case may be. And then there's also discussion amongst how the hearing loss is impacting the difference in certain and others. And there's information sharing with that. And so that's session 1. Then in session 2, they go over the audiogram, the hearing test, and what that all means, the different causes of hearing loss, and then there's discussion about how communication breakdowns occur. And they talk about the 3 main contributors, the speaker, the listener, and the environment. Because the patient is always blaming it on the speaker. The speaker's always blaming it on the patient. And neither one of them usually gives very much consideration to the environment, when in reality, that may be the key to success for both of them. So we talk about environmental factors, we talk about lighting, we talk about seating, we talk about the location of sound. People who have hearing aids with directional microphones want, if at all possible, to have the noise behind them. Because if the noise is coming from behind them, the directional microphones will kick in and you will get an emphasis of the sound coming directly at you and or from the side, depending on how they've been programmed. So if you're in a restaurant, I don't want the wall right here. I want you there so that all the noise is back here, so the only thing coming at me that the hearing aid's really going to be emphasizing is your voice. They need to understand those kind of things. And it's actually very cool because you can actually demonstrate that for people. You can say, okay, talk amongst yourselves. Now, Mr. Smith, I'm going to have you, sit. I'm going to be, by all this noise, and I'm going to talk to you, and we can do these everyday sentences. Now, okay, I'm going to turn you around so that all that noise is behind you, and I'm here. And you see, and it's, you don't have to do it with every single patient. You can, and typically what you would do is take the one that's the crabbiest, that's having the most trouble. You want the worst case scenario. Because when Mr. Smith says, "Oh my gosh, that made such a difference," everyone in the room they're gonna remember that, and they're gonna do it. So again, it's that group dynamic. A lot of it depends on, like the article that you read said, it depends on the skill of the person running the group. I have the benefit of 5 years of doing these types of things and doing them wrong for a long time, many times, that have helped me get to that point. But anyway, so by session 2, they're talking about the factors that lead to communication breakdown. Because in week 3, we're going to go over speech reading, and then we're going to have a discussion of strategies that are going to help promote improved hearing and understanding. And they introduce Dr. Krikos's claim to fame, and that is a strategy called clear speech. And I'm a huge proponent of clear speech. I try and lecture using clear speech, and that is where you slightly slow down the rate of speech. You emphasize or stress critical words or phrases or pieces of information, and you pause often. Okay? I need a volunteer to read something out loud. Just in a normal tone of voice. I want you to read sentence number 12 out loud.
If you don't want these old magazines, throw them out.
Okay. That was actually pretty good. I was expecting something more like, if you don't want these old magazines, throw them out. Now, granted, I know the sentence, so it's easier for me to say it faster. Typically, when we talk, we speak fairly rapidly. So let me pick another one and I'll do it. And then she did very well. Fathers spend more time with their children than they used to. Okay? Now, listen to me say it this way with clear speech technique. Fathers spend more time with their children than they used to. Which one's easier to understand? The second one. It wasn't all that much slower, but I paused and I gave emphasis. Fathers spend more time with their children than they used to. That's going to make it a lot easier to understand. People that have hearing problems, remember we talked about timing issues, the temporal processing is a major problem for them. So by slightly slowing it down and pausing, we allow their brain more time to complete what task? Auditory closure. They can fill in the gaps. So we spend time during this third session going over the clear speech strategy, which will then, and then we can give them time to practice. They can use scripted materials, they can use unscripted materials with their communication partners, their significant other that came with them. Wow, how great is that? Because then they're actually learning how to have better communication habits on both ends. Then the fourth session is you do continued practice with communication strategies. They will watch a video from Gallaudet University called The Right Way, The Wrong Way. and it has some communication strategies, some assertiveness training, and then we talk about the difference between communication styles. Are you an assertive listener or communicator, an aggressive or a passive communicator? Talk about ways to tactfully and successfully enlist the help of others, and then do a quick summary and course evaluation. So it's 4 sessions. And what's really cool is they have these going on continuously. So let's say Mr. and Mrs. Smith go to the first 2, they miss the 3rd one, and then they come to the 4th one. What they'll typically say is, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, don't come to that 4th one, wait. Come to week 3, 2 weeks from now, and then week 4, and finish it so that they can actually stay on track, and it's not been such a huge length of time. Typically, every 4 weeks, a new cycle starts. So it makes it easy if people have to miss 1 or 2 that they can and still stay on track. Okay? But that was the method that they use for new listeners. Typically what happens for the experienced listeners is that they spend a lot less time in session 1. Session 1 is pretty much the same. Session 2 is where it really tends to be different, where they don't spend as much time on understanding the hearing test. It's not as relevant. They haven't had it as recently. Or the causes of hearing loss. They really spend and focus time in this second section on what's causing communication breakdowns, what are the factors, what can we do about it. And then in group 3, they'll do some speech reading and so forth. So it's really only the second session that's modified a whole lot, because there's some of that's just not really relevant for them. And again, this is the method where one of the studies that was referenced in your article showed dramatic, overwhelming perception that, yeah, this really helped. Everyone rated it a 5, for instance, and the return rate was really low. Mark Ross is sort of like Pat Krikos' counterpart on the male side, so he's like the god of oral rehab, and he's at UConn, and I just have a real problem with UConn in general, so it's very similar. It's a 4-session model, and the first one kind of combines aspects of the first and second session from the Mayo design. They do introductions, icebreakers. They talk about hearing loss. They go over the anatomy and physiology of the ear. And they talk about the audiogram. In the second session, they talk about the care and use of hearing aids. They do troubleshooting. And they talk about some of the special features. Personally, I think that is information that is better presented in a one-on-one, at your fitting, and at your individual follow-up. That's just my personal opinion. But they include it here. And that's not to say that people don't benefit from having that information again, but I guarantee you, as soon as I start talking about some of these features, Mrs. Jones is going to call me a day or 2 later and say, I can't find that blah, blah, blah that we talked about. Well, no, Mrs. Jones, your hearing aid doesn't have that. Well, and it just, to me, opens a whole Pandora's box of potential problems that I don't want to have to deal with. So I personally, I don't have a problem with going over care and use. I don't have a problem with troubleshooting, but I typically would not go into the special features because unless I know everyone has the same hearing aid in that group, I'm not going to go there. Because even then, some of them might have a remote, and some of them don't, and some of them may have annual programs in their hearing aids, and others it's fully automatic, and we don't want to go there. Their third session deals with assistive technology. Then their last session, they work on communication strategies, auditory training, and home programs. What I would do is I would probably move my assistive technology module into that second module and drop out the special features, and then I would spend more time sessions 3 and 4 on communication breakdown, communication strategies, and demonstrating things like LACE and some of those home programs that can help. But that's the UConn model. Okay? So, there are a number of articles out there on group oral rehab. Hawkins, sound familiar? That's the study that you guys read. And said that at least short-term benefit was needed, or was seen, but we need long-term. One of the things that I think some people kind of mistakenly misinterpreted was when he talked about the fact that when they looked at outcomes a year out, folks were in the same place whether they did the group oral rehab or not, and that they interpreted that as the folks who went through the program lost ground, but that wasn't the case. What had happened is the other people caught up. Well, I guess my question would be if you could eat an ice cream cone every day for a year and enjoy it every day, or you could wait until 6, 9, 10 months out to start eating your ice cream. Who had more enjoyment? Those people that got their ice cream at the very beginning. So that's kind of a lame analogy, but the point is, how often have we gone through something and said, man, I wish if I had known, thus and such, I would have been doing this, or I would have gone there, or I would have. And that's basically what we're seeing is, yeah, they may both end up in the same place eventually, but boy, wouldn't it be nice if people could have that advantage earlier rather than later? That's really what that evidence showed. There were some people that kind of interpreted it thinking that that meant that the group people had a loss of satisfaction. No. The people that didn't go through it eventually caught up with them, but it took them a significantly longer time. The Smaldinos, you see their name a lot, and some of their work is really old. But they did a study, and it basically showed that the people's self-report of their hearing handicap significantly reduced before versus after. So they typically were looking at new and short-term users of hearing aids, and they did a hearing handicap inventory. Oftentimes it's done like as part of their intake for the evaluation. I like to use them at that point, just so that I kind of know what their attitude is, because when I tell them that they have a hearing problem, that they filled out a hearing handicap inventory that says everything's hunky-dory and they're having no problems. And if I can also get one from a significant other that's saying, shh, there's a big problem, then I know two things. First of all, got 2 different pages on where the hearing problem is, and I'm going to have to navigate through that minefield when I interpret my results for them. But it also serves as a really good baseline, because then if you do anything with them, first of all, after their first week or 2 using the hearing aids, they come back, you have them fill it out again and see if there's been any changes. And typically the patient's going to, and maybe marginal, the significant other is going to be like off the chart with how much better things are. and then if you put them through an oral rehab program and you check it again, you're going to have some good data about, okay, we know they went from here to here, and all we've done is the hearing aids. Now we went from here to here, and all we've done is the oral rehab sessions. Gee, wouldn't that be a great design for a research study? Because then you can know what's the hearing aid effect, what's the rehab effect. Now there are those who would argue that there could be further hearing aid effect because now they're getting more acclimated to it. But I think it's a little bit cleaner. So again, their study showed that a short course of oral rehab had a more dramatic impact on their perception of their hearing impact than for those who didn't. Chisholm, Alice Chisholm, she's also a guru. And then Abrams and McCardle, I think they were at IU. Anyway, they looked at personal adjustment and communication breakdowns in their study, and they found that people who did a four-session program were more satisfied with their hearing aids than people who didn't. Then there was also one at the VA, and they found that they could reduce costs related to follow-up care. In particular, like I said, you go over the same thing over and over and over and over again. So folks who went through an oral rehab program, they had a 47% cost savings in their care compared to those who didn't. So basically what you saw was, if you addressed it in a group with them, they didn't spend nearly as much time taking up space on your schedule, so it was a cost savings that way. Okay, because there were fewer sessions that they were basically donating. Martin did a study in 2007, and again was looking at newly fitted folks, and they went through LACE training, that listening and comprehension enhancement program that I mentioned, that has DVD-based, or you can do CD-ROM based, and now it's also interactive internet-based, so that I can actually go in and monitor and provide feedback. And their study showed that hearing aid satisfaction rates were significantly higher in the folks who completed LACE than folks who didn't, and that their return for credit rates were significantly lower. So, kind of a double whammy effect. And then Krikos and Holmes, Alice Holmes is also at Florida. They looked at two different types of programs, and they found that quality of life and psychosocial improvements were seen in the folks who went through the program versus controls who did not. So, again, we're seeing more and more and more ways that oral rehab, particularly group, has benefits. Questions? Comments? Concerns? So what I hope that you've gotten is that oral rehab is important to our patients' success. Whether we do it individually or in a group form, it's important. And while I do agree, like the very first slide said, there is a place for, and there are some things that lend themselves better to individual training, like the features of your specific hearing aid. But there are other things that I think really do lend themselves to being presented in a group format. And there are certainly other advantages to using a group format. So if you were asked at a place of employment for your opinion on group oral rehab, if you're comfortable, who would say, yes, I'm in favor of it? I'm in agreement. That's great. And if you're not, that's okay too. You may feel like still need to do it, or you know what, I'm never doing oral rehab. It is not something I want to do. And that's fine too. You know, you want to work with, but it's really cool. And what I would like to see, most of the group oral rehab research has been done on older adults. I would like to see it done with kids. I would like to see some studies with kids to see what the outcomes are. And